There are mornings when I wake up very early, when the first rays of sunlight are still finding their way through the old window panes. I sit down, make myself a cup of coffee, and let my mind wander back to the years when I was young, the years when I believed freedom was something far too luxurious. Back then, I thought freedom was something only people with millions of dollars could touch. I believed what people said, when you have enough money, you'll be free. But that was a trap. A subtle trap built from societal expectations, from overly pessimistic calculations, and from the fear of losing control over the future. Until one day, I met an older man, someone with a very peaceful gaze, unhurried, unworried, unpressured by anyone. He wasn't rich in the way the world usually thinks. He didn't have a yacht, didn't have a beach house, didn't have tens of millions in the bank. But he had something most people didn't, his own time. He said to me, "Jim, freedom has never been measured by your bank balance. It's measured by whether each morning you have the choice of how you want to live that day." That sentence over time revealed to me a truth that I later came to understand. It's not millions of dollars that make a person free. It's flexibility, restraint, and the ability to live in alignment with your values that create true freedom. And if you're watching this video, maybe you too carry a question in your heart that you haven't dared to voice. Can I live a life not dependent on work earlier than I think? The answer might surprise you. Not 2 million, not 1 million, and definitely not 40 years of nonstop work. There's another path. A path very few people talk about, but once you see it, you can never go back to the old way of thinking. There are things I never understood when I was young. I thought freedom was a mountain peak reserved only for the lucky few. I thought it was a reward for a lifetime of hard work, saving every penny, trimming every dream. But the longer I lived, the more I observed people going through different stages of life, the more I realized. People don't lose freedom because they lack money. They lose freedom because they have the wrong assumptions about money. The real problem is not the number. It's in how we were taught to think about that number. I've met people who earn $300,000 a year, yet not a single day of their lives is truly free. They have high incomes, but they also have lives where every expense grows at the same pace. They work more to own more, then own more, so they have to work even more. It's the loop of those who think they're advancing, but are actually just running in circles. Then I met others, people who don't have big incomes, don't have huge assets, don't have fame, but when I talked to them, I realized they had something many wealthy people don't. They aren't chained by societal expectations. They know what they need, they know what they want, and they know what truly makes them happy. People like that often possess a kind of wealth that very few ever reach. They're rich because they don't need much. I remember a conversation many years ago with an older businessman. He told me, "Jim, what makes life hard is not scarcity. What makes it hard is the gap between what people truly need and what society forces them to believe they need. That gap is the source of exhaustion. That gap is why so many people feel like their whole life is a marathon. They're running in shoes that are too tight." Think about this for a moment. For years, society has taught us that to be free, you must maintain your current lifestyle or even higher for the rest of your life. They teach you that you need to accumulate a few $1,000,000 if you want to retire early, a few million if you want peace of mind, a few million if you want a carefree life. Because of that, people throw themselves into a race with no finish line. But the real question is, who set that standard? Who said you must live exactly as you do now to be happy? Who decided that freedom must mean maintaining every consumption habit you have while working? When you're tied to a job, you spend money to soothe the pressure of that job. You buy fast food because you're exhausted. You buy nicer clothes because you have to present yourself. You book vacations when everyone else does because you have no other option. You buy things not because you need them, but because you need to patch the emotional burnouts of a life that runs on someone else's schedule. But when work no longer controls you, most of those expenses disappear. The pressure disappears. The habit of spending to fill emotional gaps disappears. And you realize that the lifestyle you truly need to be happy is far lower than the lifestyle you were taught to maintain. When you understand this, a new door opens. It's the door that people who follow geographic freedom saw long ago. Life doesn't always have to happen where you currently live. The real constraint most people face isn't financial, it's that they never ask themselves, Do I really have to live in one of the most expensive cities in the world? Freedom doesn't just come from how much you earn. Freedom comes from where you allow yourself to live. Someone making $300,000 might struggle in New York, but that same person in another city, a calmer place, a place with lower costs but higher quality of life, could live a life many millionaires would envy, waking up in peace, having time, having control, having flexibility. And the most incredible thing is this: you don't need to be rich to live lightly. You just need to live rightly. The biggest problem most people have is not lack of money. The problem is that they've never stopped long enough to ask themselves how much they truly need to live a good life. If someone goes through life never knowing how much they need to be happy, they'll spend their entire life searching and never finding. Freedom is not the destination of high earners. Freedom is the destination of those who understand themselves. And sometimes that journey begins not by earning more, but by looking back and cutting away the things that were never yours to begin with. I once knew a man named Marcus, not a millionaire, not a successful entrepreneur, not someone with a career that would make anyone's jaw drop. If you met him in a small cafe in the suburbs, you probably wouldn't notice anything special about him. He wore old jeans, a slightly faded shirt, shoes that clearly had been with him for years. But when you sit down long enough, when you talk to him with genuine curiosity, you realize something strange. He had something very few people today possess: tranquility. I met Marcus on a trip many years ago in a small coastal town. I remember the light breeze, the golden sunlight, and the two of us sitting on the sand, watching the sun sink into the ocean. After some small talk, I asked, "Marcus, you seem like someone who's never in a rush. How did you get a life like this?" He smiled, not the smile of pride, but the smile of someone who knows exactly what he has lived through. "Jim," he said, "I used to live exactly like those people rushing out there. I had a good job, decent income, a complete home, but every morning I woke up with a feeling I never forgot. I was living a life that wasn't mine." I looked at him. That sentence hit me instantly because I'd heard hundreds of people describe that exact feeling throughout my life. Marcus continued, "Every time I got paid, I bought something to feel like I was making progress. A new laptop, a new car, an expensive vacation. But as time went by, I realized I wasn't working to build a better life. I was working just to maintain the things I bought to feel less empty." He paused, picked up a small stone, and gently tossed it into the sea. "I mistook happiness for owning more, but the more I owned, the more I was tied down. I was like someone climbing a ladder leaning against the wrong wall." Marcus said his turning point came one winter morning. It was drizzling, and he was sitting in his car waiting at a red light. People were honking, cars squeezed together, the sky was gloomy. In that moment, he suddenly asked himself, "If I keep going like this, where am I headed? What in my life is truly chosen by me, and what has society shoved into my hands?" It was the simplest, yet the bravest question a person can ask themselves. Not long after, Marcus made a decision many thought was crazy. He sold almost everything he had: his car, his tech collection, the expensive furniture he never truly loved. He moved to a smaller, calmer city. He began living with less, but feeling more. He said, "When I let go of the luxuries, I realized the greatest luxury was not being controlled by them anymore." When he said that, I remembered a belief I've always held. People don't become free by owning more. They become free by removing what they don't need. Marcus revealed that one day he stumbled on an article saying many people around the world could live comfortably on $1,000 a month in other countries. He calculated, then recalculated, then checked in reality. And for the first time in his life, he saw a door he never knew existed. Freedom didn't require $1 million. Freedom only required that I dared to live a simple, clear life aligned with my values. He gathered what he had, a little over $200,000, and invested a small part of it into dividend stocks. Not to get rich, but to have enough. A small, steady income stream. A small lifestyle, but a wide open mind. Then he left the US for 6 months to try living in different countries. Thailand, Portugal, Colombia. Everywhere he went, he lived like a resident, not a tourist. He learned how to cook, how to shop, how to communicate with locals. And he realized something many people never realize. Happiness isn't found in the most expensive place. It's found in the place that fits your heart. When Marcus reached this part of the story, I asked him, "Do you regret anything?" He looked at me for a long time, then shook his head. I only regret not daring to live like this sooner. In that moment, I understood something profound. Each person has two lives. The first ends when they dare to face the truth that they only have one. As the sun faded, Marcus said the final sentence, "I will never forget. Jim, freedom wasn't something I bought with money. It was something I received when I stopped trying to live someone else's life." And that's the story I want to bring today. Because maybe you, like Marcus, are standing at a crossroads that only you can dare to step through. There's one thing I've come to realize the longer I live. People are not afraid of the truth. They are afraid of facing the truth. The truth that most of what they call impossible is really just assumptions they've never challenged. And in the world of finances, careers, freedom, the future, no assumption is stronger and more wrong than this one. I need a lot of money to be free. But freedom has never been a matter of quantity. It has always been a matter of quality, the quality of your thinking, the quality of your choices, the quality of how you structure your life. As I've traveled to many places around the world, I've noticed something strange. The places with lower costs of living often have higher quality of life. People live slower, relationships are more enduring, smiles are more genuine, meals are warmer. But what surprised me most wasn't the price of housing or food. What surprised me most was how much lighter the minds of people in those environments seemed. They don't carry hundreds of invisible obligations on their shoulders. They don't live by other people's judgments. They don't have to keep up with a race no one ever asked if they wanted to run. And it's that very lightness that forms the foundation of true freedom. I once asked a friend who lives in Southern Europe, "What makes life here feel so much easier to breathe?" He answered, "Jim, it's not because everything is cheaper, it's because I don't have to prove anything to anyone." That answer hit me like a strong gust of wind. How many years do we spend living just to prove something? Prove that we're successful. Prove that we're okay. Prove that we're worthy. Prove that we're not less than anyone else. But true success doesn't need to be proven. True success is when you can live a life aligned with your values, even if those values are so simple that others don't understand. And here is the insight I want to give you, an insight that can completely change how you see financial freedom. It's not that you need to earn more. You need to be less dependent. Freedom does not bloom from overaccumulation. It blooms from removing what is unnecessary. I've met people who spent their entire lives saving every penny in the hope that one day they would finally live comfortably. But when they reached the number they thought was enough, they still felt uneasy because the unease didn't come from their wallet. It came from a mind that had never been freed. And on the other hand, I've met people who had very little but were rich in a way that's hard to describe. They weren't driven by fear. And that alone allowed them to make decisions that were wiser, calmer, and more aligned with their values. Have you noticed this? People make their worst decisions when they're in panic, and their best decisions when they feel they have options. When you have $300,000, not $3 million, and you know how to use it the right way, how to place it in the right environment, how to live by your own rhythm, you're not buying freedom with money. You're buying freedom by reducing the pressure on your mind. Freedom doesn't come from a number. Freedom comes from the gap between what you want and what you truly need. In the modern world, everything is designed to make you believe you need more than you really do. More stuff, more services, more conveniences, more credentials, more achievements, more recognition. But do you know what's most ironic? The more people chase things they don't need, the more they lose the things they truly want. I've seen this happen to hundreds of people. They work 50, 60 hours a week just to sit in a fancier chair at a restaurant, drive a shinier car, or vacation at a more expensive resort. But when I ask them, does that make you happier? They often stay silent for a long time before answering. Because deep down, they know the answer is no. The most powerful insight I've learned about life didn't come from boardrooms, from big speeches, or from expensive books. It came from observing real people, those who dared step out of the race. I came to understand that once you break free from the pressure to live up to other standards, the cost of having a quality life is actually shockingly low. It's not that you need to change careers. It's not that you need to change your family situation. It's not that you need to change your earning capacity. You just need to change one question. From how can I make more money? To, how can I need less but live better? That one question alone is enough to change an entire life. Because when you ask that question, you step into a realm that not many people dare to enter, the true realm of inner freedom. And it's this insight, not math, that forms the foundation of sustainable financial freedom. Freedom doesn't start with your wallet. It starts with the awareness that you can absolutely choose to live differently. When someone realizes that freedom doesn't lie in how much money they make, but in how they structure their life, they often ask me a question that has followed me for many years. Jim, where do I start? I smile every time I hear that question, because I too once stood at that threshold where you know you need to change, but you don't yet know where the door opens to. And the truth is, there isn't just one door. Life opens far more doors than you think. You just haven't turned your head in the right direction yet. And to see those doors clearly, you have to do something most people have never done. You have to observe your own life as if you were observing someone else's. I remember the first time I did this, I sat down and looked at the way I was living, not with my familiar eyes, but with the objective eyes of an outsider. I realized that most of what I thought I needed was really just what I had grown used to. And habits, if left unchecked, turn into the most subtle chains. When I look back at Marcus's life, the man I mentioned earlier, I saw this clearly. He wasn't richer when he moved to a smaller city, but his life became more expansive. Why? Because he started living like someone who chooses, not someone who is carried along. And this is where reality begins to shift. You don't need to get on a plane tomorrow to start a new life. You just need to begin with one simple act. Reduce the pressures you put on yourself. It's fascinating to think that someone could save thousands of dollars a month simply by letting go of things they don't need, yet spend 20 years working to pay for those very things. When you start to understand this, you immediately see that financial freedom is not a luxury dream, it's a daily choice. And when you combine that with the truth, the financial industry doesn't want you to know that your cost of living changes completely. When you're no longer tied to a fixed location, the whole world suddenly becomes much lighter. I remember the first time I stepped into a seaside town in southern Europe. Clear skies, salty breeze, white houses clinging to cliffs like swallows' nests. People walked slowly. They greeted each other on the street. They sat drinking coffee as if time were something they created themselves, not something chasing after them. I asked a local, "Is life here expensive?" He smiled and said, "Expensive or cheap depends on whether your heart is at peace. If you need too many things, everywhere is expensive. If you only need enough, everywhere is abundant." I've carried that sentence with me for decades, and it led me to an important perspective. If you have $300,000, you don't just have money, you have options. Not options to live extravagantly, but options to live lightly. You can live in a big city, spending on the things you're used to. Or you can live in another city where you don't need an expensive car, don't need a luxury gym membership, don't need a housing bill that eats up nearly a year of salary. And just by changing the context of your life, you change your entire spending structure, your emotional landscape, and your lifestyle. A friend of mine once said, "Jim, when I moved to a cheaper place, my income didn't increase, but my quality of life doubled." When I asked why, he replied, "Because there, I have time to live. Here, I only have time to pay." I thought a lot about that line, because if you live in an environment where every moment of your life is tied to obligations, how can you open yourself to peace? How can you listen to your true dreams? How can you live as the person you want to become? Freedom has never really been about money. Freedom has always been about space in your mind, in your time, and in your surroundings. When you place $300,000 in a place where everything becomes lighter, you are not retiring early. You are returning early, returning to your true values. And the most wonderful thing is, you don't have to wait until you've finished everything to start living more lightly. You can start right now. Today, right after you finish watching this video. Not with a big decision, but with a small one. Tomorrow, I'll live a little more clearly. Freedom always begins with decisions like that. There are evenings, after a long day has ended, when I often sit alone in a quiet room, watching the warm yellow light reflecting on the old wall. Those are the moments when I reflect the most on life, on the people I've met, the journeys I've witnessed, the stories I've heard. And in those hours, one truth keeps returning to my mind. People don't fail because they lack opportunities. They fail because they lack the space to see the opportunities right in front of them. You see, when our lives are filled with too many things, too many responsibilities, too many expectations, too many possessions, too many worries, our mind becomes like a room so cluttered that you can't even place a small chair inside. It's not that we don't want to change, it's that we no longer have room to change. A person cannot step into a new chapter of life while they're still holding on to too many old pages. I realized this a long time ago. To live a free life, you have to learn how to let go before you learn how to hold on. And letting go is much harder than holding on. Letting go of habits that no longer fit. Letting go of expectations that aren't yours. Letting go of the image society wants you to become. Letting go of the feeling that you must prove your worth through what you buy. Do you know what's most ironic? The people who have the least are often the ones who understand best what they need to be happy. And the people who have the most sometimes are the most unclear when it comes to answering that question. Once during a talk in a small town, a man stood up and asked me, "Jim, how do I know if I'm living right?" I looked at him and saw eyes that had gone through many years of hardship. And I said, "When your life becomes simpler and your mind becomes more open, that's when you're living right." He stayed silent for a long time, then nodded. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Many people don't need more money, they need more peace. I once met a woman in southern Spain who used to work 60 hours a week at a big company in the US. She told me she had spent almost all the money she earned just to buy temporary relief, until she moved to a place where each morning she could hear the sound of the waves instead of car horns. She said, "I'm not richer, but my life has become more meaningful." And do you know what that taught me? Meaning always wins over assets. Whenever life feels meaningful, you always feel rich no matter how big or small your bank account is. The deepest philosophy I've learned about financial freedom is this. Freedom is not the absence of work. Freedom is the absence of compulsion. If you wake up every morning and you know you have a choice, you can work if you want or not work if you don't, that is freedom. If you know you can live well without having to sacrifice your health and your time, that is freedom. If you don't have to race, don't have to compete, don't have to prove yourself, that is freedom. And you don't have to become a millionaire to achieve that. I know this may sound strange in a world that constantly pushes people to strive, to fight, to compete. But I've seen it repeat itself across dozens of countries, in different people, in different circumstances. Freedom doesn't come from assets. Freedom comes from the structure of your life. You place yourself in an environment, you get a life shaped by that environment. You place yourself in a race, you get tired according to that race. You place yourself in an expensive city, you have to work according to that city's pace. You place yourself in a peaceful place, your mind also becomes peaceful. That is something many people have never allowed themselves to experience. Not because they can't, but because they've never stopped long enough to ask themselves, am I living by my own choices, or am I living by the inertia of society? I've often compared a person's life to a garden. If you plant seeds in barren soil, you have to water twice as much, fertilize 3 times as much, and care 4 times as much. But if you plant the right seed in the right soil, the tree will grow on its own, grow tall on its own, grow strong on its own. People are the same. You cannot force yourself to bloom in an environment that doesn't suit you. And sometimes freedom is simply daring to move your garden to a place with more sunlight, better breezes, and richer soil. Financial freedom in the deepest sense is not having enough money to live. Financial freedom is having enough space to live right. And that space usually doesn't require as much as you think. There are evenings when I sit alone in my old study, the yellow light slanting across the wooden desk, creating a small pool of light in front of me. And I often think about life in a very different way compared to when I was young. When I was young, I believed life was a straight line, just keep moving forward, earning more, accumulating more, pushing more. But the longer I live, the more I realize life is not a straight line. It is a series of circles. And each circle is a chance to begin again. Sometimes you don't need to go farther, you just need to turn in a different direction. I remember one evening, in a quiet seaside town, I saw an old man walking an old dog along the shore. The wind was gentle, the waves whispered, and he kept walking slowly as if nothing in this world could possibly be urgent enough to shake his calm. When I asked him if he ever regretted not living a more ambitious life, he simply smiled and said, "Jim, people don't regret living slowly. They only regret living so fast that they lose themselves." That sentence has stayed with me for many years because it captures the greatest truth people often overlook. No one in this world truly wants more. They just want more peace. But peace doesn't come from adding more into your life. It comes from lightening yourself. And when you understand that freedom doesn't require waiting for millions of dollars, doesn't require waiting for 40 years of hard work, doesn't require waiting until you are enough, but only requires one clearer decision each day, you begin to see life differently. You begin to realize you don't need a big house to feel safe. You don't need an expensive car to feel valuable. You don't need to prove anything to feel like you're making progress. You don't need to run in a race you never chose. You just need a life where each morning when you wake up, you know that the day belongs to you. A life where you can take a deep breath without feeling guilty. A life where you have time to look out the window and truly see the beauty unfolding in front of you. Freedom is not something we touch once. Freedom is something we nurture every day through small choices. Choosing to reduce, choosing to be clearer, choosing to be kinder to ourselves, choosing to live more honestly, more slowly, more authentically. And then, one morning, you'll realize what I, Marcus, and many people around the world have realized. Life doesn't ask you to be rich. It asks you to be awake. When you are awake, you'll see that $300,000 is not a small number, but it's not a huge number either. It's just a seed, and if you plant it in the right soil, in the right environment, in the right life structure, it can nourish 10, 20, 30 years of freedom for you. Freedom doesn't come from miracles. Freedom comes from arrangement. Freedom comes from daring to step into your second life, the life where you live lighter, clearer, and more at peace. And if this part resonates with you, let me know you're still here with me with I read each one, and I know each dot is a heart looking for a new direction for itself. And before ending the video, I want to leave you with something. A small reminder, a sentence that I believe anyone who understands it, truly understands it, will change their entire life. Success is not something you pursue. It is something you attract by the person you become. Jim Rohn, become someone who has freedom first, and freedom will find you. Become someone who lives rightly, and life will become right for you. Become someone who doesn't need too much, and you'll see that you have so much. If you feel this video has opened a new perspective for you, a door you once forgot, I invite you to stay with Jim Rohn Treasures. We'll walk together through stories, through philosophies, through small things that are powerful enough to change the direction of a life. If you find value here, please leave a like, hit subscribe, and share this video with a friend you think needs to hear this. And I have a question for you, a question that might open the next chapter. If you truly allowed yourself to live a lighter life, what would you start with? I look forward to reading your answer. See you in the next video.